This video is sponsored by Miniswap. Alright you lot, welcome back. Today we're going to have a little chat about their Space Marines that are being shown off as part of the Armageddon box, the whole Blood Angels versus Orcs situation that is on its way at some point fairly soon. Now, I've not been massively impressed with what they've shown off so far. Undoubtedly, some of this is down to the way in which Games Workshop is revealing the new Space Marines. They are doing an ultra slow drip feed. They're doing the thing of, here's one guy, and then next week you'll get to see one more guy. That by itself has something of an impact when it comes to just how excited and how much fun a reveal can be when you know that you're seeing one specific model out of a squad of, say, 5 or 10. I mean, so far, we have seen this guy right here. It's a new Intercessor with a different helmet. Admittedly, there are some other design things going on that harken back to older marks of power armor, but my main thought for seeing it was, cool, Games Workshop have discovered head swaps, which, you know, a bit facetious, but that's kind of the impression that I got initially. And then we've also had this new Vanguard veteran as well, and pretty much the same kind of reaction for both. And I've been trying to work out whether I'm being like, whether I'm just like dealing with oversaturation of Space Marines, whether it is as lazy as it actually feels, whether I'm simply not the target audience for this specific box, whether there is in fact much they can do with Space Marines at this point, given that they were at one point the most oversaturated range that Games Workshop had, by far, and they have cut a load of Firstborn kits. And I would still suggest that, to an extent, they are still quite an oversaturated range. So when it comes to, you know, a new launch box, a new big box to celebrate the launch of a new edition of 40k, if you want to put Space Marines in, what do you do to make them different? What do you do to introduce something fresh and new? What do you do when you have taken all the Firstborn stuff that you want to update, or most of it at least, and already updated it? We already have rescaled Terminators and the Librarian Terminator, and we've all got things that we really like from the Firstborn range, and a good chunk of what we've seen be refreshed are the core kind of facets of what used to make up Space Marines as a whole. And now we're in a position where we are effectively getting Intercessors all over again with what feels like very minor changes, and that, to me, just doesn't fill me with excitement. I mean, the fact is, right now, if I wanted to go out and make Vanguard veterans, or if I wanted to make Intercessors that had old pieces of armour, I could do exactly that without having to wait for this new box. And in fact, if I did want to do that, a good way to do it would be to pick up parts second hand. Oh, what a segue. What a segue. You see, I could go straight over to Miniswap, the online marketplace for miniatures made by hobbyists for hobbyists. And if I was looking to expand my Space Marine army by doing a bit of kit bashing, I could go to the Space Marine section, I could tick bits and have a look and see what's on offer. If you're looking to do anything Deathwing related, you might want to get on there right now, in fact, because when you look at that, Deathwing Terminator Squad parts. Nice. Failing that, if I was looking to pick up something new on sprue, wanting to avoid those boxed prices, and of course save a decent chunk of money compared to going to Games Workshop or indeed third-party retailers, we've got that option as well. It's not just 40k as well, they do of course have sections for Age of Sigmar and everything else: Horus Heresy, Old World, Blood Bowl, Necromunda, Kill Team, Lord of the Rings and Fantasy. If you're looking for something specific, say the old Vanguard Veteran Squad, you can have a look for it. If there's no one selling that kit right now, you can be alerted when someone does put one up for sale. And since there's 45 watches for this right now, if you're sitting on one of these and want to shift it on, I would get onto that. If you sign up to Miniswap using my link in the description and the pinned comment down below, then you'll get 0% seller commission for the first 90 days and you'll get free shipping on your first order. Thanks to Miniswap for sponsoring the video. Let's get back to talking about Space Marines. Now, the fact that you can very easily kit bash yourself some stuff that looks exactly like what Games Workshop are currently highlighting as part of the new box is undoubtedly part of the issue that I've got with them, and one of the reasons that I'm not feeling the excitement that I feel like they are looking for me, or you, or just, you know, consumers in general of the game to feel. It's very difficult to look at something and go, oh, it's that same guy with a different hat, when you have been able to create that same guy with a different hat this whole time. The Primaris range is getting on for 10 years old now, just about. I think it's like technically actually 9 years old, but still. And kit bashing has been an option from day one, and kit bashing in this specific way, kit bashing in such a way that you have something like this, simply has not been difficult. Like, even if you haven't been someone who collected Space Marines before, there are so many ways to obtain, you know, different helmets. Things like this, and I highlight this specifically because I have used these exact same helmets on Primaris Marines. They fit pretty damn well, and they are available from Games Workshop. Now, of course, those only work if you're looking for that aesthetic, but they are not the only helmets that Games Workshop sells or has sold. But that's just to illustrate the point. You can quite easily make things that are the equivalent of what they've shown off with little to no effort and without doing anything like 3D printing. And that is part of the issue. And the thing is, I was looking at it from the lens of simply, they're not for me. These are things that I thought were aimed at more, you know, new converts, newer players, people who were just getting into the game. It feels like some boxes are aimed at people already entrenched, some boxes are aimed towards people who are only just getting into it. At least that's the way I was kind of looking at it, and I was like, well, it's not... I'm not that bothered. I just don't care about what they're showing off for a good half of this box so far. It's just not interesting in any way. But that's okay, because not everything has to be aimed at, like, you or me specifically, right? It's a big player base. There's a lot of people involved who play and enjoy 40k, who collect the miniatures, and the fact is they're never going to produce something that literally everyone loves, unless you're talking about the Cog Fort, in which case they absolutely did do that. But that's the way I was kind of looking at it, that these are presumably more focused towards newer players. Except, whilst we were talking about it on Adeptus Ridiculous, which is going to come out later today, I won't spoil the entire conversation, Bricky said something that really kind of resonated with me, which is that if this is aimed towards new people, why is the focus on older stuff? See, when it comes to the updated Terminators, be they, you know, your standard lot or your Assault Terminators, the reason I found that so much fun and so interesting and just so enjoyable is I absolutely love Terminators. But Terminators have been a little bit short and a little bit squat. Now they're not. Now they are the right scale, they look much better for it, and they were collectively older kits that frankly just look sharper and crisper and nicer now. And so even though that was a similar thing of, it's just nostalgia, it's stuff that we've seen before but updated, that felt like it was something a bit more exciting than the head swap idea that we're currently getting with the reveals for the Space Marines. And the thing is, it's still playing on the same thing, which is something that I hadn't really considered. There is no point putting these different helmets on Primaris Marines for newer players because they're not going to understand the significance of that. They're not going to sit there and go, oh, it's the guy that we had before, but with an older mark of armour in some places. Oh, that's awesome, because they're not going to know what the older mark of armour is. It's not going to have any of the sort of nostalgic relevance that it would have to existing players. But for me personally, at this point, most existing players, if they wanted that aesthetic, have had years and years to make it. So it kind of feels like it's marketing the idea of mixing and matching your armour to produce something more personalised, when I think every Space Marine player that I know has at some point already done that. Which then leads me to think, do I even know what the target audience is for this specific update? Because so far the vast majority of the feedback that I've seen from people who already have Space Marine stuff has been, okay, cool. I'm not interested or excited, but cool, I guess. Like, it's been a very lukewarm reception so far. And I think part of that as well, I did mention it earlier, is the way it's been revealed. So this Vanguard veteran right here, it's not that interesting by itself. By itself, you can look at that and go, well, it just looks like an assault intercessor, and that's it. It doesn't look anything particularly different or interesting, and the details that it does have are fine, but because it's presented as a single model, it just makes it look like any old lieutenant, but with a different head. The thing is, it's not really any less interesting or fun when it comes to the details than, say, the Sternguard Veteran Squad, which, I mean, thematically, it's pretty damn close to this. Like, it is. It's not that dissimilar. The amount of decoration on the legs is pretty much the same. In fact, the armour styling on the legs is the same. The crest across the breastplate there is maybe not quite as interesting, but that could be down to it being painted black as opposed to gold. When we look at the Sternguard veteran squad, we have the same thing of, oh hey, look at that. There's some older marks of helmet in there. And on them, it looks good. On this, it sort of looks like someone's just swapped the head out, which is a massive double standard. And I'm not saying there's any logic to thinking like that, but I would be lying if I didn't, admit to having that reaction when I don't remember having that reaction to these. And I think part of that is down to the fact that these have been revealed as a group, if I remember right. When they showed off the Sternguard veteran squad, they didn't go, here's one guy in isolation that looks slightly different to the guys that you've seen before. Instead, we have seen a cohesive group that when bunched together, the differences become far more impactful than being shown by themselves. And frankly, I think that's true of a lot of reveals, like even when it comes to, lieutenants, captains, whatever. Unless it's someone named, unless it's someone with background, with history, unless it's someone with deeply, personalised or customised armour, a lot of the time they will show off a new Space Marine of some kind, and you will think, it's a good-looking Space Marine. It's still just a Space Marine, but it is a good-looking Space Marine. And it's only when something is a little bit different or a little bit interesting in isolation that that kind of feeling is overcome. I think that's a totally natural feeling to have as well, by the way, when it comes to Space Marines, because they've been the poster boys for however many years at this point. I would count it, but then I would feel old. And I think it's hard to overcome that at this point. Like, if you've been around the hobby for any length of time, Space Marines are Space Marines. There are loads of them. There are tons of them. And whilst there are ones that are definitely interesting and exciting, it's the ones that do something a little bit different that are interesting and exciting. And I think the biggest core issue with trying to update intercessors again and introduce a way to personalize those intercessors again is that that's not something that anyone's been shy of doing up until this point anyway. I think this is a point where we have so much in the way of the Space Marine range covered, just generally, that even those who like the aesthetic, which I'm someone who do like, I really do like the aesthetic of the Mark X armour and Primaris as a whole now, I just don't find it interesting enough to revisit it again with a different hat. And there will be loads of people who will go for that, and that's totally fine. But I think for me, at this point, unless the other half of the box across from the Orcs was something that wasn't Space Marines, I don't know how interesting I'd find the box at all. And that is kind of where I've sort of landed with it. I don't necessarily think that Games Workshop is being super lazy with it. I think they're simply at a point where, what do you even do? You want to make more Space Marines? We have them all. Like, I'm not being hyperbolic. I do genuinely think at this point, we kind of have everything you need. There's nothing more really missing, apart from updating Firstborn stuff, that has already been retired. And they're already doing that. At least when it comes to generic Space Marines. When it comes to individual chapters, I think there's always room and scope to expand there. But at the same time as updating Firstborn stuff, like the Vanguard veterans, like that Landspeeder that we saw, they're also at a point where they're having to try and update Primaris stuff to make it more visually interesting than it was before, and they're having to do that by going back and mixing Firstborn parts in, just to give it a bit of extra personality. That was very long and very rambly, but I think at the end of the day, this batch of Space Marines simply aren't for me, but I'm also wondering who they are for, and I'm wondering who is seeing them and getting super hyped, given that we are now at the point where Games Workshop is literally refreshing intercessors, which are not even really that old or in need of refreshing. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Where do you land on it all? Do you think that it's just a case of we just don't need more? We just don't need more Space Marines, and it's at the point now where it's getting a bit tedious seeing it again. Do you think it is actually laziness, or do you think it is a case of, well, how do you update something that's already got a bunch of the updates, or nearly all of the updates that it actually needs? Would it have been better off going with an actual chapter that has unique iconography, as opposed to trying to keep them, not bland, but generic? Because I think actually, if they did go for a specific chapter and made half the box for that chapter, it would be far more interesting, because at least there'd be something unique in there. But at the same time, they can't sell that to as many people, so they're not going to do that. I feel like they're sort of stuck in a way, but how they unstick themselves from that particular issue, I have no idea. So I've got nothing constructive to add there at all. Sorry. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Feel free to click all the things. Thank you to Miniswap. Make sure to check them out using the link in the description and in the pinned comment. And I'll see you for the next one.